Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at a life story that is truly extraordinary, and not because of some kind of public fame, but because of the sheer intensity of the individual at its center. We're talking about a man named Utku ERTAN. On the surface, he's an English teacher in the Turkish Air Force. Pretty unassuming. But his life is this continuous loop of pouring every single ounce of his being into one passion, mastering it, and then moving on. So our mission today is to really get into the sources that chronicle Utku's path. I mean, we're going from him being a globally recognized referee to a self-taught obsessive musician, and then finally to this hyper-focused basketball shooter. We're trying to understand what drives that kind of unyielding commitment. And maybe more importantly, what is the profound personal cost of living that way?
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? That tension. You have this profound achievement on one hand and this intense personal sacrifice on the other. It just defines his entire narrative. Utku's story is this powerful testament to, determination, to resilience. It shows you what human focus can unleash. But the sources are starkly clear. This dedication, it doesn't just happen. It demands everything, and it repeatedly takes a heavy, heavy toll on the most basic parts of his life. You just see this pattern again and again.
Okay, so let's unpack that journey. Let's start with what defined a whole decade of his life, which was his role as a prominent international wheelchair basketball referee. And this wasn't just some weekend gig. This was
A complete absorption of identity.
Exactly.
It's so much more than a part-time interest. It really became his international persona. The commitment was just immense. It required him to travel constantly, extensively. And we're not just talking a few trips. The sources list these really far-flung locations, the competitive circuits in Europe and the USA, but then all the way to China and Morocco. That level of involvement, that's professional level stuff, even if it wasn't his main job.
And he didn't just participate. He basically codified the knowledge. He authored two acclaimed books on the craft of refereeing, one in English, one in Turkish. I mean, that's a level of dedication that goes so far beyond just being on the court. It's an intellectual investment.
It is. But what's fascinating and also, deeply sad is how quickly the consequences follow this success. While he's gaining all this international recognition, traveling the world, becoming an author,
Yeah.
that relentless schedule, it led to the end of two different marriages.
And there's that one gut punch of a detail in the source material, the one that gives it this tragic cyclical context.
Yes. When his second divorce was finalized, his twin children, a son and a daughter, were 5 years old. And then you connect that to his own history, and the pain just becomes incredibly sharp. That was the exact age Utku was when he lost his own father. It's like the same relentless drive that was seeking global recognition was. Well, it was creating this painful echo for his own kids.
So if he's losing so much at home, but gaining this incredible international respect and this identity, why didn't those relationships and accolades fill that void?
That's the key question, right? It's about his coping mechanism. The sources suggest that refereeing offered a kind of bittersweet respite. It was the cause of the problem, but once the problem happened, the sport became the only safe space for her. His whole life was just restructured into these short, high-intensity trips abroad. They gave him structure and a powerful distraction from, the reality of being separated from his children.
So for that whole decade, the refereeing was his escape hatch from the chaos at home.
Precisely. The structure of the sporting world, the friendships, seeing unfamiliar places, new customs, different food. All of this gave him a profound sense of identity. He wasn't just a divorced English teacher back home. He was a global official. He was a citizen of the world, defined by his competence in his movement, not by the sadness he left behind.
Which brings us to our next section. We have this story of extreme dedication and consequence. But to really understand why he lives this way, we have to look deeper. The sources talk about his psychological backdrop. What created this internal engine that just requires constant, all-consuming commitment?
And this is so critical. This is where we move from just biography into real analysis. The source material draws a very direct line between his intensity and his early life trauma, losing his father at 5, being raised in a boarding school, which is, it's a very structured but not a conventional family environment.
Okay.
It deeply impacted his development.
He missed out on this foundational years of a stable family unit.
Exactly. And the sources kind of hypothesize that this experience left him perpetually a child at heart.
Yeah.
Like he's psychologically frozen in time at that boyhood age of 5. And that is the psychological motor that's driving all this intensity.
Wow. that makes that phrase perpetual state of urgency that we see in his hobbies,
Right.
it suddenly feels so much heavier. He's running against a clock that just stopped when he was a little boy.
Absolutely. It explains the intensity and the fragility. The sources suggest that this relentless drive to achieve in these hyper-specific areas might be a way of doing things on behalf of his late father,
Hmm.
almost like he's compensating for a life that was cut short. So every single pursuit has this existential weight. It can't be a casual hobby. It has to be a quest for perfection.
And we see this illustrated so powerfully in his hobbies, which, like you said, are never just relaxing activities. They're all consuming obsessions. I mean, just look at the rigor he applied to things that had nothing to do with his professional life.
Right. Take his music. He's completely self-taught. Piano and saxophone. That doesn't just happen. It means he poured hour after hour into practice, learning these incredibly complex instruments with no formal lessons. It just shows this unyielding rigor. It's not just in the sports arena. It's just who he is.
But the story that really crystallizes this for me, the obsessive nature, comes from his time with three-cushion billiards. It wasn't just about playing well, he had to master it with a kind of endurance that sounds almost superhuman.
The billiards example is maybe the peak illustration of this.
Yeah.
The sources talk about these marathon sessions. 15 hours. 15 hours straight without a break. Just think about what that requires. It's not just physical stamina. It's laser-like concentration on angles, on physics, on touch for 3/4 of a day straight. For him, that's not extreme. That's just what's necessary to achieve anything worthwhile. He sees relaxation as a failure of focus.
It sounds physically draining. And the description we have of him, a slender frame, always in motion, a hurried demeanor, it suggests he's always trying to match his physical speed to his mental urgency.
He's a man constantly running forward, which brings us to the moment when his defining passion, refereeing, just hits a brick wall. As his status grew internationally, so did the obligations. And Utku reached this major crossroads. The commitment he was giving was professional, but the financial reward was not.
Ah, the brutal collision of passion and financial reality.
That's it. Utku found himself in a spot where the income from officiating just wasn't enough to live on, especially with his alimony obligations. The commitment, no matter how fulfilling it was emotionally, was just financially unsustainable.
So he makes the quote-unquote rational choice to give it up, to quit the one thing that had given him a global identity for a decade. How does someone who is wired for that level of intensity possibly cope with the gaping void that must create?
Well, the sources show he coped by immediately finding a replacement that demanded equal intensity. He couldn't leave basketball entirely, so he channeled all that energy into its most focused, measurable component, shooting the ball, specifically perfecting the three-point shot.
And this is a major shift, right? He goes from this global, public, social obsession to one that is profoundly solitary. He stopped engaging. He'd actually decline invitations to play in games. His time was spent alone, just honing this one singular skill.
It became an internal yardstick for success, totally free from anyone else's judgment. And what's fascinating is how he approaches it. It's not mindless repetition. It's deeply methodical, data-driven. He operates like a scientist of the jump shot.
How meticulous are we talking?
Exceptionally. He becomes a self-taught specialist. He studies Steph Curry's shooting drills from masterclass videos and replicates them. But he doesn't just shoot until he's tired. He structures everything. He meticulously records the data. He'll consistently fire 10 shots as a single group, and then he tracks his accuracy day by day, looking for those tiny improvements.
That whole process gives him this internal, quantifiable measure of success that he can control completely, which must be huge for someone whose life has felt so defined by things he couldn't control. But is it really excellence, or is it a form of, compulsive escapism? How do the sources help us figure that out?
I think that's the critical lens we have to use. And the sources suggest it's both. It's excellence that is driven by escapism, the intense focus you need to replicate a pro athlete's drill, to record the data, to track your progress. This whole demanding ritual acts as a powerful, necessary distraction.
A distraction from the reality of his life, from being an English teacher struggling with finances and family issues.
Exactly. By focusing so intently on the mechanics of a jump shot and the data, he's actively pushing out all the various challenges of his personal life.
Mm.
And these worries are significant. Complications with his former partner, the emotional challenges of the twins, financial issues, job stuff. The solitary pursuit of the perfect three-pointer isn't just about getting better at basketball. It's a psychological shield against a really chaotic and painful personal reality.
It's just remarkable because it shows us that the same drive that can lead to global achievement can come from such deep personal pain. So if we connect this back to the bigger picture, What does Utku's journey ultimately say about the human condition?
I think it's a profound testament to the boundless potential that's fueled by a singular, intense focus. But it's also about the complexity of coping. Utku doesn't look for conventional balance. He looks for absorption. He just continuously channels all his energy into pursuits that demand everything from him, whether that's mastering the whistle, the piano, the billiards cue, or the jump shot. He's using mastery as a way to manage an existence that really started with a fundamental trauma.
It's a fascinating synthesis, this relentless need for perfection, driven by those deep psychological roots, loss of his father, the boarding school. It just manifests in these wildly different external ways, from being a global public figure to this quiet, meticulous, solitary shooting ritual. It's all basically serving the same powerful purpose. It's providing a structure he can control and a way to cope with life's challenges.
And that raises a really important final question for you, the listener, to think about. He shows what true, unyielding commitment can accomplish. International acclaim, mastery across different complex skills. But if commitment at that level requires shedding so much, 2 marriages, crucial time with his children, financial stability, what's the rational cost calculation that truly defines a life well lived? Is it the depth of your achievement, or is it the breadth of your connection to others?
A truly heavy but important question to mull over. Thank you for diving deep with us into the compelling life of Utku ERTAN. We'll catch you next time.